Recording Academy, drums.
Hey everyone, in this lesson, we're going to be talking about recording the drums. Throughout this entire process, we've been using a 2-channel audio interface, the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. If you're just getting started off, this is probably one of the most common audio interfaces you're going to be using. And the downside of it is that you only have 2 channels to work with. So if you want to record an entire drum set, how do you mic a drum set with just 2 microphones? Well, my recommendation to you, and what I've done in this video, is I set up the Shure SM7B on my kick drum. I really want to make sure that I have some sort of microphone on the kick drum or the bass drum, because it's such a low frequency object that being able to capture the nuances of every time the kick is being hit, it's very good. Because every time you're using microphones like close mic situations or overheads, you're going to hear a lot of the cymbals. Cymbals are very loud. The snare drum is really loud. The kick drum, since it's one of the most prominent pieces of modern mixing, I want to make sure that the kick drum has a good sound coming out of it. So I'm putting a close mic. Any sort of microphone you want to use on the bass drum or the kick drum is going to do just fine. I use the Shure SM7B. Again, it's got that foam filter on top, so it's going to tame some of the sound that you're hearing from the cymbals. If you want even more isolation, you could take a blanket. If you have a moving blanket or something that's pretty heavy, you can use a couple of chairs on either side of your kick drum, drape the blanket over the top. You'll get plenty of isolation for your kick drum. I was fine with the sound I'm getting from the Shure SM7B. And in fact, I want to show you a process where you can go in and sample replace your kick drum so you get even more punch, more low end, even just from using a 2-channel audio interface. So the Shure SM7B is on the outside of my bass drum. You can cut a port in your kick drum if you want to be able to do that. With this sonar kit, I don't have a port on the bass drum. It's just fine with the sound that I was getting, but it's on one of those really small mic stands just outside of the bass drum. I don't have to use the cloud lifter in this situation because the drums are so loud. They're giving plenty of volume. I did not need to use any extra preamp boost. Now, the second microphone that I'm using is the Shure SM81. That's the small diaphragm condenser microphone, and I'm using it as an overhead mic. This is a mono overhead mic. It's going to channel 2 of my audio interface, and I've got it positioned directly above the middle of my snare drum. Since I'm recording these things in mono, I don't have to worry too much about there being some weird phasing happening, especially when I go in and sample replace the kick drum. But when you're setting up the overhead mic, just make sure you have some distance between your snare drum and the microphone capsule. So what I did is I took a microphone cable, I simply suspended it above the snare drum so that the end of the microphone cable is on the middle of the snare drum. And that lets me know that wherever I've got my hand up here, if the cord is straight and it's hanging straight right above the middle of the snare drum, that's where I'm going to put my microphone. I'm usually going for about 3 feet. So I'm going to go 3 feet above the middle of the snare drum, and I'm going to put the SM81 pointed straight down. Now on the SM81, there is a 10 decibel pad that you can engage simply by rotating the ring next to the microphone's capsule. It says -10. So you put that in place. Most of the time, if you're using any sort of condenser microphones on a drum set, you will need some sort of pad. If you don't have a pad or a -10 dB switch on your microphone, maybe your preamp that you're using, whether that's an external preamp or your audio interface, they might have a pad that you can engage on that as well, because drums are just really loud. Sometimes with drums, you don't even have to be using the gain knob because there's just so much volume being produced by the drums. It all has to do with how loud you're playing, what kind of song you're playing. But this is the setup that I chose to use. So like I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a very different kind of lesson because obviously when you're recording drums, it's going to come down to your own personal choice. So like what vibe you're going for, what kind of tuning you want to use on the drums. If you're looking for more setup information about drums, you can check out my YouTube channel. I've done many different videos where I've recorded drums here in this small bedroom. You can certainly get a great sound out of that, making use of products like Moon Gel and gaff tape and some of those Remo rings. It's all about setting your drums up for success. But in this video, I mainly want to go over the setup with using a 2-channel audio interface so that you know I've got a microphone on my kick drum and that I'm using a mono overhead mic. Of course, if you have an 8-channel audio interface or if you're using a mixer with like 32 channels, you can go crazy and put as many microphones as you want on your drums. Just remember that the more microphones you add to the equation, the more issues you're going to start having with phasing. So phasing is if I hit my snare drum, at what point does the sound hit my overhead mic and what time does the sound hit my bass drum microphone? If they're hitting at obviously different times, you're gonna have this phasing effect. And it sounds very much like if you're a guitar player used to using a phaser pedal, everything starts to sound like it's swimming in an ocean. You can really get into some problems. So if you have an 8-channel audio interface, try to keep things as simple as possible. Go with the basics and you should be good to go. But that is my general setup for the 2-channel audio interface. One of the features that I want to show you, and I don't know if I mentioned it just yet in Recording Academy, is the solo function. So here in PreSonus Studio One, each of the tracks that we have, obviously you have this M switch, which stands for mute. So if I want to mute any of these tracks, I can mute them. And then when I hit play, you should just be hearing the acoustic guitar and my vocal.
Palm trees, no beaches, no sand, no brand new shiny sports cars.
So that's the function of mute. If I want to unmute the kick drum, I can just unmute the kick drum, and now when I hit play,
just a few trucks on hand. There's a tire swing still hanging on the crook.
Okay, so that is the mute function. Next to the mute function, there is the solo function. This is particularly useful when you're in a recording situation. I've recorded the drums, but let's say I want to go back and listen to the drums. And I don't want to hear everything else because I'm really just wanting to focus. Before I get up from the drum set, I want to know, did I get a good drum sound? So if you hit the S switch, notice that as soon as I hit S, all of my other tracks have been muted. So now when I hit the play button, I'm just hearing the kick drum. Now you can add more to this. So if I want to solo the overhead mic as well, now we're hearing just the kick drum and just the overhead mic. So that is the solo function. That's going to be particularly useful when you're going through and you're mixing or in your recording environment. You want to isolate certain tracks. Make sure you make use of S as often as you can. Whatever track you have selected, if you hit S on your keyboard, the key S, it will solo the track for you. You can hit S again to undo the solo. Also, at the bottom left of the screen, these are kind of like the macro switches for solo. So if you have a bunch of tracks, and let's just say I have all these random ones soloed, I want to clear all of the solos. I can go down here and hit this yellow S. It will turn off global solo. So now everything goes back to normal. That's just a good little trick to know of. So like I mentioned before, in this video, I want to show you the footage of me recording this drum take. Of course, you can open up this session for yourself. Make sure you download the session that has the drums and piano. We'll be recording piano in just a minute. We'll get to that lesson. But this way, if you open up the session, you can listen to the overhead mic, you can listen to the kick drum mic, and just be aware, we haven't mixed any of these things. So if you're not used to hearing unmixed drums, this is what unmixed drums sound like. I guarantee you, when we get to mixing, when we get into sample replacing, things will start to really polish and shine. So just be aware of that as we're going through. We haven't used any plugins. There's no EQ, no compression, no gating, no reverb. We'll get to all that in just the future. So the rest of this video, check out this footage. This is taken again from the church that I work at. This is my drum setup, and then here is the take of me recording in this session.
Where I come from, there ain't no palm trees, no beaches, no sand, no brand new shiny sports cars, just a few trucks on hand. There's a tire swing still hanging on the crooked old oak tree, where my Uncle Buckwin broke his arm doing tricks in '03. That creek is my ocean, those woods are my shore. How could I, as rich as I, ever want more? Where I come from, where I come from, just a dirt road near the backwoods with a deer stand and a front porch. Just a boat ride when the water's right and a fish caught on my hook. That sunrise when it hits her eyes and she gives me that old look. I know that I've already won where I come from. watched the stars come out. And when we were half asleep, we heard an awful sound. A big ugly beast came tumbling as we all ran through the woods. And it wouldn't change one thing about that night, even if I could. Where I come from, where I come from, just a dirt road in the backwoods with a deer stand and a front porch. Just a boat ride when the water's right and a fish caught on my hook. That sunrise when it hits her eyes and she gives me the look. I know that I've already won. Where I come from, where I come from, where I come from, that's where I come from.
Now there are many other videos here on my channel other than the Recording Academy, but make sure you check the playlist for Recording Academy for more lessons as they're being uploaded. YouTube is recommending this video just over my shoulder, so give that one a watch and I'll see you at the next video.